From Canada, Citizens Forum, where we look at the important issues of the day through a lens of democracy and media and try to figure out, how do we build a better country for ourselves? Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. It is Saturday, January the 11th, 2025. Citizens Forum is a show about, I guess, news and current affairs, but I'd like to try to cover them in a slightly different way by always connecting them into the issues of democracy and media, with the question being, do we have a democracy here in Canada and in North America? And do we have the free press that I grew up thinking we had? And I certainly always believed we had a free press and a democratic government until, slowly over many years, I came to see that I don't think that's so, folks. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm always willing to admit that maybe I'm wrong, but on those two things, I don't think that I am. So I saw a story this morning, which my co-host Norm has said a few times. You never know what we're going to be talking about because the news changes so fast that you can't make any plans. And this thing isn't really a changing of the news. It's actually an old story that I'd never heard of, and it kind of shocked me. Here it is. So it's from October of 2024. It says California fracking ban takes effect statewide today. I came across the story completely by accident this morning, and it shocked me because I'm very interested in fracking. And it shocked me that I had no idea that California had banned fracking as of last October. They stopped approving new fracking permits in 2021. And as of sometime in October, they ended the practice. And to me, it just goes to show that how much control the corporate media have over what we know and what we think. I mean, here in British Columbia, we are currently building our environmentally friendly NDP government is currently building, with the private sector, of course, a pipeline to bring fracked gas from northeastern British Columbia across to the coast and send it off. And if there was a story that California was banning it, I mean, there'd be a movement here to do the same. So they don't want us to know. And because they don't want us to know, we don't know. It's incredible.
Well, my issues with fracking, we could probably do a whole show on just some of the issues that they're using. In many cases, toxic waste that they pump into the ground. There's a tremendous amount of energy required to pump this into the ground. When they crack the ground and frack it, if you want, the gas is getting into, this is up in the Smithers area in particular, I know, it's getting into people's well water, so they're drinking natural gas well water, which doesn't taste very good. I've had some in the past and caused by natural reasons, but there's all those issues going on, as well as, well, in California, a particular issue, fracking has been associated with causing earthquakes. And these issues and the fact that California is finally smart enough to realize they can't have fracking should be in the news.
Yeah, and also California uses the fracking wastewater, the poisoned water that's left after the fracking takes place. They've used that for years to irrigate their crops, and including organic crops. And that's why I basically stopped buying produce from California. I mean, and again, there's another story that nobody's heard. And now we've got these huge fires in Los Angeles, which are 10,000 structures, have been burned. And the media is playing the mayor of Los Angeles off against the fire chief. They're both to blame. And then Trump against the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, over who's to blame. But I haven't seen one word of mention that the oil companies are in any way to blame. And there's also no suggestion that maybe we better start slowing down, at least using the precautionary principle, right? Maybe it's a good idea to just slow down a bit and see if we really can continue this consumer lifestyle that is in 1,000 different ways destroying the planet. I mean,
well,
there it is.
It's a consumer lifestyle to use and waste. It's probably a better way to word it. Lifestyle that bothers me considerably, that I'm not fully on board that man's causing climate change that much, but by wasting our resources, by putting the pollution out into the air, which all ties into what they say we have to stop doing to stop climate change. Definitely the waste and the poisoning of the environment is an issue that we've got to stop. And that is a big concern for me, totally. The fires in California, well, of course, you're going to hear stories about them being caused by directed energy weapons. And really, until the fires have settled down and a proper analysis of it is made, I don't think anyone can say for sure what may have happened there. But they're getting their ducks in a row to say that it was not directed energy weapons. I was reading an article this morning in the news. You say the news changes constantly. Well, this article from CBC, which you can trust as much as you want, but it's explaining why it's perfectly natural for a tree next to a house that has burned down, totally destroyed, for the tree to still be standing and not burned.
Right.
So
Norm and I disagree on this topic, which is good. It's nice to have.
I was going to say, you can't really disagree with, there's no way a tree standing next to a house that has been burned down, all the houses around it are burned down.
Actually, there are lots of good explanations. But let's move on to topic number 2. Here in Victoria, British Columbia, our home city, there is a massive housing crisis. I mean, it's a disaster in many different ways for many different people. The homeless pay the worst price; they suffer the most. And I mean, my perspective is that there is a deliberately caused shortage of housing that has been at the root of this housing disaster. And the disaster includes backbreaking rents and huge mortgage payments and all the instability surrounding the homeless issue and all that deals with. So a couple of years ago, Norm and I drove around town, very close to downtown, very right, not out in the boondocks. This was very close to town. And what we saw, which is no surprise, is that there is a huge area of land. It's about 2 miles long and usually about 3 blocks wide, that is covered with strip malls with big parking lots, car dealerships. There must be 10 to 12 car dealerships there, each with a huge parking lot, and single-story retail and light industrial, but not that much light industrial, mostly just parking lots. And so we took a bit of a video that's showing that even here in Victoria, which is like one of the craziest housing markets. And so the result of that is our premier and our NDP government have completely removed any restrictions for developers in our cities. They say the developer, because there's such a shortage of housing, that developers can now go into neighborhoods. The neighbors, the people who live there, have no rights. The developers have all the rights because we need housing. And yet, right here in Victoria, there is this expanse So, Norm, maybe you can show it and we'll chat about it.
Okay, there we are. Okay, well, the big thing that I noticed, all the things that you've mentioned, I agree with, but the tremendous amount of space that
Yeah, so right here, yeah. So,
devoted to cars, it's just, are they the most important creature on this planet? It would seem so. And then when you compare it to the homeless camp that right next to some of these massive amounts, that
this is right downtown in Victoria.
there's just some imbalance in the whole process. And getting out closer to where you notice the strip malls and the massive car dealers will be coming up to that in a moment.
Can you stop it right here? This, when I first saw this, it reminded me of, Swift Current, Saskatchewan 30 years ago when I went through, and Swift Current, believe me, is a beautiful little city. But, this was what was close to it. But it didn't matter because, Swift Current is a small town with lots of space. But this is, like a block, literally 2 blocks away from downtown. And you can see not only this vacant lot, but, a close to condemned building next to it. And it's like very old single-story retail-ish with empty vacant lots. And this is a small one, but there's a lot that you could put 800 units of housing on, right? It's not far from here. And it's been sitting empty for 20 years. And just that single, it's huge. You could easily put 800 units of housing in a nice setting, right? Close to downtown, close to the malls, blah, 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 but they won't do it.
Yeah, that just frustrates me no end when I see that waste. Another waste is this next bit up at UVic. Right. The massive areas for parking. When I went to UVic, there weren't all these parking areas. And if we're going to be encouraging public transit, public transit to the university is, I guess you could say, the most obvious place. And why do we
This is just one of
many. I spent about 10, 15 minutes riding around looking at all these parking lots. It is staggering.
And you would think that at the very least, maybe you can stop it here. Yeah. At the very least, UVic brings in thousands of students, and then they're pushed into the housing market, plus the staff and all the people who work at UVic. Why not have some nice housing there? They've got all these parking lots. Why not have housing for the people who live there? And most importantly, the land is free. The land is such an expense here to buy a little bit of land to put up a building, but they own it, right? And they won't do it.
You forget, cars are the most important creature on the planet. That we devote so much of our resources to cars, to supporting cars, not just the car itself, which is pricey enough to buy, but this that I have on the screen here now,
right?
These massive parking lots around strip malls and everywhere. That who's paying for those parking lots? The answer is you are, in the price of the goods you buy in the store.
Yeah. And again, there's so much. This picture doesn't really show the size of the parking lot here. Again, you could put up a couple of thousand units of housing, but they won't do it. And instead, what they are doing is pushing up rents and pushing up prices, which is meaning a lot of people can't afford to eat, young families can't afford to have children, and nobody ever asks the question, where is that money going? And why does the media never talk about it? And why do our politicians never talk about it? This is the reality.
Well, don't forget, you're paying for it when you go into the store.
Yeah, and that too.
Somebody's paying the parking lot. You are. Which, when you talk about the cost of living, this type of thing, how much does the storage of cars contribute to our cost of living?
Yeah.
By the way, before we go off that
yes.
parking lot that I showed you, I built it.
Oh yeah, right, right. You used to be in the road building business. Um, so I think we're going to move on to an interview with our guest for today. His name is Mehdi Najari. And I'm going to say a few words about Mehdi, just because somebody suggested I should, give bios of at least myself, which I've never done, and Norm, and you can do your own. But I will say something about Mehdi. Mehdi is originally from Iran, studied soil science in the United States, um, moved up to Canada, where because of the logging, clear-cut logging we have here, I mean, soil scientists should be worth their weight in gold because we have to protect the soil. But Mehdi can't work for the provincial government in the Ministry of the Environment or the Ministry of Forests or anything like that because he won't lie. He won't say it's all okay. And this city, Victoria, owes a large debt to Mehdi that nobody knows about because, geez, it must be almost more than 30 years ago. Mehdi wrote a report about the clear-cut logging that was going on in our drinking watershed. The city of Victoria owns the large lake called Souk Lake, where we get our drinking water from. So it's protected, we are told. But Mehdi found out that the city government was clear-cut logging the watershed because they'd been told by their staff, who were included a lot of logging people, loggers, that clear-cut logging enhances water quality. It's good for water quality. And they believed it. Our city council believed it and fought for the right to continue clear-cut logging. Fortunately, they sort of lost, although they've never really stopped. So that's just a little bit about Mehdi. And today we're going to talk about the Canadian political situation, starting with Canada's political situation. Hello, Mehdi.
Good morning. I was very concerned about what's happening in politics. In last 2 years, I noticed that the media is bringing up Mr. Poilievre and putting down Mr. Trudeau. And the question is why? What did Mr. Trudeau has done that is become so opposite, creates such a big opposition that people hate him now? Why? They mention few things like housing cost or affordability crisis, and also the carbon tax. First of all, carbon tax is peanuts, is nothing. If you get rid of it, not much is not going to put much money into the pocket of people at all. In terms of housing crisis and affordability crisis, that's is in United States, in Australia, New Zealand, and UK, the Five Eyes country, and also Canada. So it's not something that Mr. Trudeau created it. It's the policies that has been imposed by corporate interests on all these countries of so-called Western progressive countries. What the problem is that I believe Mr. Trudeau has a shelf life of 9 to 10 years, 8 to 10 years, and his shelf life is over. So they want to bring another person in there to push the corporate interests, corporate policies. So what is happening here? We see that right now there is a push for vote of non-confidence. Supposedly after purgation, they're going to come back to the parliament and vote down the government of Trudeau. Why Mr. Singh want to do that? Because right now, if you vote down Trudeau, you get Poilievre. And what Poilievre is going to do is going to be very damaging to Canada. For example, he talked about axe the tax, build a home, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Let's go through that list. Axe the tax is not just talking about the carbon tax. He's going to axe the tax for capital gain tax and also cut more taxes of corporations. So what does that mean? That means when he talk about the fixing the budget, that means that he is going to have to cut lots of social expenditure, like childcare, like pharmacare, like dental care, and many other things. Plus, probably privatize a lots of public assets. Do we want that? Is that what we want? Because that's going to put more people in the street as homeless. You know, he's not going to solve the problem of homelessness. And he doesn't talk about homelessness, you know. So fix the budget means that he's going to so-called balance budget. How do you balance budget? If you are going to increase military spending and give the tax cut to the rich, he's going to balance the budget by cutting social expenditure again. Is that what we want? So my question is to Mr. Singh is that you push for dental care and pharmacare and child care. Now you want to bring Poilievre to get rid of all of those. Why? Why don't you let the government of liberal government continue until their mandate is over in October? And meanwhile, from now until October, expose what Mr. Poilievre is going to do, you know?
And expose Mr. Trudeau at the same time.
And Mr. Trudeau is over. His time is over.
Yeah.
It's useless to concentrate on Mr. Trudeau. What is coming at us is very important, you know. And what Poilievre is going to do, he is the corporate puppet. Totally. I mean, all of them are corporate puppet to some extent, but this guy is much more. So what he's going to do, you have to look at what Harper did when he has the majority, and that's what's gonna happen. And
well,
another issue.
Mehdi, I was going to say that probably the only person I can think of that is worse than Trudeau, and he's got enough reasons to be against him, is Poilievre.
Yes.
That they are in a competition, and it's been going on since, well, you wouldn't remember this, but I can remember back as far as Diefenbaker. They've been in a competition to drive us down and pass us over to the corporate interests from the early 60s.
Yeah, another important issue is what they bring this Mr. Trump threatening us with, you know, they are spending $200 billion to defend us. Who is going to attack Canada? The only country that questioning Canada's sovereignty, both in southern border of Canada and in Arctic, is United States. With Mr. Trudeau, with Mr. Trump, we don't need your protection. He also acts like a crime boss. You know, he's trying to extort money from us in the name of protection. Oh, we will, you know, it's like the crime bosses, you know, and also the organized crime go to the small businesses and want to extort money from them for protection. You know, who is threatening those businesses? The same crime bosses. So Mr. Trump is, instead of being a president, he's acting still like a hustler, a street hustler that he was in New York, and he's demanding protection money, you know. So, but what really he wants is his claim is that the drugs coming from northern border to United States or illegal immigrant. That's nonsense. What he really wants to increase Canadian expenditure on military spending, you know, from $50 billion to over $100 billion. That means there has to be lots of cuts. Right now, the budget of Canada is about $65 billion deficit. If you are going to spend another $50 billion for the military spending, where are you going to cut? You know, so we have to consider that. So all this nonsense is about military budget that we don't need to, instead of spending money for our people's need, the homeless crisis, the poverty, they want us to put the money in the pocket of American arms manufacturer, buying military
comments on that I think Trump really surprises me that if he attacks Canada because of the NORAD and NATO agreements, he will have to come and defend us from himself.
Yeah.
But the other thing on when he keeps talking about increasing our military spending budget, he talks about spending more money, but he doesn't talk about more efficiency out of the money. And I mean, we all know stories about the U.S. government spending $300,000 on a toilet seat, and who knows what. That they're giving tremendous amounts of money to the defense industry. I don't think they're getting their money's worth themselves, but he wants us to give more money to the defense industry, and no one ever talks about getting value for our money.
It's all a racket. This is not about the defense of America or Canada. This is a racket, scams that they are taking huge amount of money. I should remind people that the military budget in 2004 in Canada was about $8 billion. Today is something over $50 billion, and they want to increase it more. Do anybody feel safer now than 2008, 2004? No. This is all a scam to take money that we pay as a taxes to spend on our own needs, take that money and give it to American multinational arms manufacturer. That's what all is about. Another thing that Mr. Trump wants is to open up Canada to the mining interest for the rare minerals. Right now there is a rush. That's why he talked about the Greenland, because of the rare minerals there. And America want to capture as much as that is possible. So I hope people of Canada don't get confused about all these noise they hear. They want military budget increase and also open up, get rid of regulation and open up the mining to American corporations. So those two things is important. And also go after Mr. Singh and ask him why he wants to give vote of non-confidence and bring this government down so Poilievre can get to power as soon as possible to destroy Canada.
You know, it's interesting, Mehdi, because I would say the reason the NDP and Jagmeet Singh feel they have to vote down the Liberals and remove them from government is that the media is putting pressure on them that if they don't, they're with Trudeau, and Trudeau is so evil that anybody who's with him should be destroyed. But if Poilievre explained it like you just did, then he's got a good argument. And people, I think, would understand it. I mean, it makes sense. It may be right, it may be wrong, but it makes sense. But we never hear that argument. We
have to remember in 2005, Mr. Layton did the same thing, helped Mr. Harper to come to power. So nobody talk about that and learn from the past. And right now, the same group of people are around Mr. Jagmeet Singh in NDP that were around Mr. Layton in 2005. So it's very important, so-called progressive, quote unquote, put lots of pressure on Jagmeet Singh and NDP and ask them, why do you want to bring this government down? And why don't you let continue until October, and meanwhile expose the danger of Mr. Poilievre and what he is going to do with his policies to Canada.
Mehdi, any last words?
One last thing I should say is about North American Union. In 2008, Mr. Harper was pushing union with United States, in the name of North American Union. This is the wet dream of Americans since 1988 with the FTA, North American Free Trade, and they want to eliminate that border so we become a resource place for American corporation to plunder the resources of Canada and make us much more poorer and environmentally much more polluted. I hope people realize what's happening here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi. And thank you, Norm. And thank you, everybody, for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. I I hope we talked about things that are of interest to you. If you have any suggestions, I don't know if our email address is going to appear, and I've forgotten it. Yes. Well, let's see. Maybe I haven't forgotten it.
news@independenttv.ca.
Okay. news@independenttv.ca. Thank you very much. And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.